I think the movie is stunning for a lot of reasons, but one of the great things about it is that it takes you through the very meticulous, sometimes tedious process of telling a story and putting things together. And so, what the Spotlight team did was an education for me in terms of how a story like this is assembled.
It was fascinating to watch how this was put together. I mean, this is an incredibly truthful piece of fiction, if that makes any sense at all, because they were taking what we worked on for, I don't know how many, 6 months or whatever, and compressed it into 2 hours, which I would have guessed was an incredibly difficult thing to do, and they did a fantastic job.
Tom always had a very, very firm grasp on what was happening in the, I'd say, like how the temperature was boiling up throughout the process of the story. There's so much information that comes at you, so much information that the characters are learning and compiling that, without someone who has a really specific and strong grasp of how that elevates, dramatically, I think you'd be lost. But in our case, we had someone who knew the story so incredibly well, so intimately aware of how the thing was going to build, that I think is what makes the film work really well.
They did an amazing job capturing the nuances of all this work. And I mean, there's some small stuff like when we were inputting a lot of data into the spreadsheets, which was my job basically, because I was the data geek essentially, and which took weeks, but they sort of gave, in probably like a minute, they sort of gave you the sense, okay, this was really time consuming, it was really tedious, but they were able to capture that in just a few seconds. It was really well done.
I think it's a very compelling story. As Matt said last night, it's a wonderful thing to revisit this and the work that they did, not only for the sake of the story, but for the sake of the survivors and people that have suffered abuse. So, people who didn't have a voice had a voice through the Spotlight team, and perhaps will continue to have one by virtue of the light that is being, that is shining on this subject matter.
It's amazing. I mean, we did this story back in the first story ran in 2002. That's a long time ago, and it had a pretty long tail anyways. It went on for a long, long time. It broke at the beginning of the internet really, and it went viral very, very quickly. But things tend to die down, and this is going to give it another push. I think it'll help a lot more survivors, so we're very excited about that.
My research was relegated mostly to what they were dealing with on a local level in the Boston area. So we know what the repercussions are because of the consequences and the impact that the story had. But in terms of, for me, educating myself, it was really more about what, the information that they had, because what they had is what I have as a character in the movie.
Oh, we did 600 plus stories the first year, and we continued to do stories for years afterwards. And as a matter of fact, even Mike Resendiz and I sat across from each other for a long, long years actually, and we would still get phone calls and emails from people 10 years later saying, I just read your stuff on Spotlight, I'm a victim, I was abused by so-and-so, and this would be from all over the country. It was amazing.
It's always a fun, exciting, odd thing, and it's fun to do it with Matt. People who it is a surreal thing, no matter who you are, even if it's part of your profession. But it's fun to kind of do it with these really remarkable people, really cool people, fun people, interesting, and then to kind of glance over and say, it's pretty cool, right?
It was a very strange experience, I have to say. And people are yelling and shouting, cameras going off, and it was like, wow, this is a little unreal, to be honest. But it was so much fun, and to be portrayed by someone like Brian, he did such a good job capturing what it was like to be a reporter during that time. It was really a great experience.
He's a remarkable person because he, he's an actor. He started off as an actor and still acts. He's a great actor, actually. And so my experience with him was one of comfort and ease because you have kind of a shorthand with someone who understands that, in his own words, like he said last night. If you get good actors and smart people, you can kind of just let them go and do their job. And so his makes his job a little bit easier. But he's a remarkable guy. He's written a tremendous piece of screen literature, if you will, and I think this will. I think the work speaks for itself.